Kelp forests have a number of benefits for the coastal oceans. They provide a habitat for a diverse set of species, they provide food for species, and as well as hiding spaces, and they take up carbon dioxide more than land trees. But kelp forests are at risk as a predator that used to be a problem is becoming more of a problem and eating live kelp. We need to keep kelp forests healthy for all of its benefits, including reducing climate change. Therefore, it is crucial that we discuss what will help protect them. That's on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean. And today we're going to be talking about some news that is coming out of the west coast of North America and the Pacific Ocean, where there used to be a plethora of kelp forests, habitats along the west coast of California, along even Oregon, and even some parts of Washington used to just be scattered with wonderful kelp forests, lush kelp forests, kelp that would extend from the ocean ground to the top of the ocean surface, and it would just be beautiful. I've never had a chance to dive on these types of kelp forests or these types of habitats, but something that is definitely on my bucket list. I know when I go to any aquarium, when they have a kelp forest habitat or like a display, that's one of my favorite ones because there's so many species that are in it. They're all camouflaged in their different ways, and they're just beautiful. And they're just fun to see, like their form and function and how their form actually works towards making them a better fit for the kelp forest and for that area. So it is definitely an important habitat, not only for carbon sequestration, but also for the fact that people use kelp forests. They fish there. They dive on there. They snorkel. They what do you call it? What's that one where you don't use scuba? I can't. I forget the name. Oh gosh, it's late. It's late on a Sunday when I'm recording this. But regardless, they free dive. Free dive that's what I was looking for. They free dive on it. People use it for tourism. It's a pretty big thing. They use it for also securing that coastal area. As waves come through the kelp forest, the energy gets dissipated, so there's less damage along the coastline from wave action. So it's a nice, beautiful habitat that we need. And right now, it's being ravaged by a small predator, or many of small predators, the urchin. The urchin is it looks like a pincushion. You'll find it crawling along the bottom, along walls of the ocean, and they are plentiful when they're found with a good habitat and a good food source. And they'll eat a lot of algae. They'll eat plants, aquatic plants, ocean-going plants like kelp forests. And most of the time, when they're kept in check, they are eating dead kelp forest sort of leaves and maybe dead roots or something like that. But they are essentially eating just dead kelp forest. But when their population gets bigger, the competition gets more, and they want to eat more kelp. So they start going after the live plants, which, as you can just kind of figure out, that's not good for the live plants and what we need them for. And so, we need to make sure that they are kept in check. Now, in the past, sea otters used to keep them in check. They used to be their major predator, and they would eat them on a regular basis, and they would keep them in check. However, historical hunting for sea otter pelts was a big deal back in the 1800s and early 1900s. And so we saw a massive decline of sea urchins, and they're still on the endangered list. And so we still need to have them protected so they don't act as much of a deterrent as before. Then came the urchins got plentiful. They increased in abundance, and they started eating the kelp forest, and then we saw a decrease in kelp forest. And then we saw the fact that sea stars, the sunflower sea star along the west coast, a multi-tentacled starfish, went after it and started eating it, and started eating the urchin. And so then all of a sudden we started to see that with a bit of a return of sea otters and the sea stars, we started to see a decline in urchins, which kind of led to an increase in kelp forest coverage. right? Because once the kelp forests are all eaten, it's easy for sea urchins just to grab onto any new nodules or any new growth of kelp, and then they would just, they'd just be decimated for a long time, like 20 years or so. But with the sea stars, the sunflower seed star coming up and increasing in abundance as they ate more urchins, and of course the urchins were plentiful, so the sunflower seed star basically grew. I don't know. I keep saying sunflower seeds. I think it's sunflower sea star, not sunflower seeds. I think I'm just used to saying sunflower seeds all that time. I just realized that as I was saying it. But yeah, it's a sunflower sea star, not sunflower seed. It's sunflower sea star. It makes me hungry for sunflower seeds. Regardless, it's something that we needed to have. Unfortunately, as we saw in the recent past, we saw these starfish, along with other starfish on the west coast of North America, get decimated by sea star wasting disease, which was a disease that came out, I believe it was because of the onset of increased heat from the blob, as well as an El Nino, as well as climate change. It just gave way to disease, and that disease was in the form of sea star wasting disease. And we started to see a lot of starfish, a lot of sea stars along that west coast just eviscerated. And so with the decrease in sunflower sea stars, we saw a new increase in urchins. And then what happens when we see an increase in urchins? As we expect, we see a decrease in the coverage of kelp forests. So the study that we're talking about today was looking at the sunflower sea star, and as it would have to pick up the slack. And so what they're hoping to do, this study, is just look at how effective the sunflower sea star is as a predator of sea urchins by raising well-fed, starving sea urchins in a lab setting. And after about 6 weeks of collecting and raising urchins, the researchers let 24 sea stars free to feed. The sea stars consumed an average of 0.68 urchins a day, and when the urchins were starving, like they are in a nutrient-poor urchin barrens, which means there's no dead kelp, sea stars ate even more. So, knowing that when sea urchins are hungry, the sea stars will eat even more. So the more active they are, it seems like the more they'll eat. It's a major difference between the sea stars and other predators like otters, who are picky when it comes to choosing what urchins they eat, preferring healthy urchins that are less common in a barren. So a barren, without any kelp forest, you get this barren. So the sea urchins are dying off. They're kind of they're slower. They're not moving as much. They're not feeding as much. They don't have as much energy. So the sea stars end up eating more of them because they're just easier to pick off. Obviously, you see sea stars in the ocean. They don't move very fast. They have to be sped up when you look at time and seeing how far they go. A lot of times we speed up the speed of the video so that you can see them actually moving quite fast. But they're not fast at all. So you wonder about this 0.6 urchins a day. You see that might not be very much, but it says eating less than 1 urchin per day may not sound like a lot, but we think they're used to be over 5 billion sunflower sea stars. And so although there's no census on just how devastating sea star wasting disease has been, most estimates place the loss at about 90%. So we used a model to show that a pre-disease densities of sea stars in the U.S. West Coast were usually more than enough to keep sea urchin numbers down and prevent barren. So with this knowledge in mind, future research can focus on how exactly to use sunflower sea stars to keep sea urchins populations in check and hopefully restore kelp forests in the process. So essentially the results were like these sea stars will eat sea urchins, and when they're in barrens, they will eat them even more. 0.6 a day or 0.68 urchins a day. This is obviously an effective strategy and can reduce over time the sea urchin population, allowing for more kelp growth and more kelp regrowth in the areas that it's been decimated. So here's the question is, do we add more sea stars to the system to kind of get things moving along? Do we breed them outside, like in aquaria, and then move them over to the ocean? How is that done, or do we just let it happen naturally? I'm sure there's some kind of repopulation, which can be quite expensive, but it's something that we have to do. We are doing more drastic things to increase carbon sequestration, like carbon uptake with plants and aquatic plants like kelp, seagrass, mangroves, which are kind of land plants, and saltwater plants, or trees. So it's something that's becoming more and more important and more talked about as restoration is done along the coastlines, that we need more of these types of plant habitats, and something in the ocean that needs to be done as well. So it's something that's quite expensive because of that third dimension, that ocean. Also, it's just expensive just to restore anyway. So hopefully not many kelp forests will be decimated. Hopefully we'll see some regrowth, and we'll see an increase in in sunflower sea stars, as well as other sea stars that might eat urchins. Time will tell, and to see what happened. I'll try and follow the story and see if there's anything else that's come out of it. Maybe get an interview or two. But that's it for today's episode. A quick one, a short one for you to start your week. But if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. You can hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. Or you can go to my website, speakupforblue.com, and you can just hit me up there. It goes right to my personal email. I just fill out the form on the Contact Us page, and I will see you there. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.